I wake up before sunrise again. My body feels heavy, but I still say, one more shift, just one more. I whisper it like a promise to myself. At the warehouse, Mike laughs. Man, you look dead. When was your last rest? I force a smile. Rest comes after success, not before it. He shakes his head. You're killing yourself for money. I reply, no, I'm building a future for Sarah. She deserves a better life. Mike sighs. And what about you? I don't answer. I just keep working. During lunch, I call Sarah. Hey, did you eat? She replies softly, yes, I'm busy organizing things for our dream house savings. I smile. Good. I'll work extra tonight then. She pauses. You don't need to push yourself so hard. I say, I want to. I love you. She replies, I love you too. But her voice feels distant. At night, I deliver food across the city. My feet hurt, but I keep going. I tell myself, this pain is worth it. Mike texts me, go home early. I reply, can't. Need overtime. When I reach home, Sarah is sitting on the couch, scrolling her phone. I say, you're still awake? She nods. Just checking messages. I sit beside her. Mike thinks I'm overworking. She smiles faintly. He worries too much. I laugh softly. Maybe. I look at her and ask, are you happy? She hesitates. Of course I am. But something in her eyes doesn't match her words. I ignore it. I always do. I say, we'll get our house soon, I promise. She leans on my shoulder. I trust you. I close my eyes, feeling like I'm doing everything right. I don't know that trust can break silently. Mike later calls me again and says, you really need to slow down. I answer, I can't not yet. He says, what are you even living for? I pause, then say, for her. Silence falls between us. Mike finally replies, man, that's not love, that's slavery. I hang up without replying. That night, I lie beside Sarah awake. I whisper softly, do you really love me? She turns slightly and says, yes, now sleep. But I stay awake staring at the ceiling. I feel something inside me starting to crack. I think about every extra hour I worked, every sacrifice I made without question. I whisper again, this can't be wrong. But no answer comes. Sarah breathes softly beside me, unaware of the storm inside me. I decide I will keep going for now, because I still believe in the future I'd built in my mind. I remember Sarah telling me once that love means sacrifice. I believed her completely. I whisper again, I'm doing everything right, but my voice shakes slightly. Somewhere deep inside me, I feel fear growing. I close my eyes tighter and tell myself tomorrow will be better. I don't know that tomorrow will change everything I believe in, but right now I choose to stay silent. I hold Sarah's hand gently in the dark. She doesn't move much, and I wonder if she even feels me anymore. I whisper one last promise under my breath. I will keep working no matter what. I don't know what future waits for me, but no, I can't stop now. Not yet. I close my eyes and listen to the silence of our room, feeling both love and doubt fighting inside me. I don't know what tomorrow will bring, but I still hold on to her, believing that my sacrifices mean something even if I'm starting to break inside. I noticed it the first time when I came home and she didn't look up from her phone. I said, hey, I'm back. Sarah replied, yeah, welcome. Just that. No smile. No hug. I try to laugh it off. Long day. She nodded without meeting my eyes. Yeah, errands. I placed my bag down and said, you've been doing a lot of errands lately. She finally looked at me. What's that supposed to mean? I raised my hands quickly. Nothing, just asking. She stood up. I'm just busy. That's all. I smiled gently. Okay. I didn't mean anything. But inside, something felt off. The next day at work, Mike wasn't around, but Lisa was covering his shift. She looked at me while I was packing deliveries. She said, you look tired again. I replied, I'm fine. She shook her head. You always say that. I chuckled. Because it's true. She leaned closer slightly. Is it though? Or are you just used to ignoring it? I stopped for a second. What do you mean? Lisa said quietly. I see things, you know. You work nonstop. And your wife? Does she even appreciate it? I frowned. Sarah is fine. She's just busy. Lisa raised an eyebrow. Busy or distant? I snapped a little. She's my wife, Lisa. I know her better than anyone. She stepped back. All right. I'm just saying don't ignore signs. I didn't reply. I just walked away. That night, I came home early. I wanted to surprise Sarah. I opened the door quietly. I heard a quick sound upstairs. I walked up slowly and saw her shutting her laptop fast. She turned to me, startled. "You're home early." I smiled. "Yeah, thought I'd come back sooner today." Her voice was tight. "I was just working on something." I looked at the laptop. "Work stuff." She closed it completely. "Yeah." I nodded. "Okay." But her hands were shaking slightly. I noticed it. I said gently, "Are you okay?" She forced a smile. "Of course. Why wouldn't I be?" I stared at her for a second longer than I should have. Then I looked away. Just checking. We sat together later, but something felt different. She wasn't talking much. I said, "You've been quiet lately." She replied, "I'm just tired." I nodded slowly. "Maybe you should rest more." She looked at me. "Maybe you should too." I laughed softly. "I can't. Not yet." She said, "You work too much." I smiled. "It's for us." She didn't respond. The next morning, she said casually, "We need more money this month." I looked up from my plate. "More?" She nodded. "Bills are increasing." I asked which bills. She hesitated. "Just things. House stuff. Future plans." I immediately said, "Don't worry. I'll handle it." She relaxed slightly. "Good." At work, I pushed harder than ever. Mike came back and saw me loading heavy boxes alone. He said, "You're seriously going to collapse one day." I replied, "Not today." He sighed. "You're doing it again, aren't you?" I frowned. "Doing what?" He pointed at me. "That thing where you sacrifice everything and call it love." I shook my head. "It is love." He said quietly, "Love shouldn't make you blind." I didn't answer. That night, I handed Sarah more money than I usually do. She asked why so much. I smiled. "Just in case you need it." She nodded. "Thanks." She didn't hug me. She just walked away. I sat there for a long time thinking. Lisa's words came back to me. "Don't ignore signs." I whispered to myself, "There are no signs. Everything is fine." But even I didn't sound convinced. Later, I saw Sarah's phone light up on the table. A message preview appeared. I didn't read it. I just looked away. I told myself again, I trust her. But for the first time, I felt like I was saying it to convince myself, not because I believed it. And somewhere deep inside, I felt the cracks starting to spread. I was about to leave for work when Sarah stopped me at the door. She said, "Wait, I need to talk to you." I turned back. "What happened?" She looked nervous. "It's a family emergency." I immediately dropped my bag. "What kind of emergency?" She hesitated. "My cousin's situation, they need money urgently." I nodded without thinking. "How much?" She avoided my eyes. "All of it, if possible." I froze for half a second. "All of it?" She quickly said, "I know it's a lot, but I'll pay it back. It's just temporary." I walked straight to the drawer and pulled out my savings envelope. I said, "Take it." She blinked. "You didn't even think about it." I smiled faintly. "You're my wife. I don't need to think." She took it slowly. "Thank you, really." I replied, "It's okay. Family comes first." She nodded and left the room quickly. I stood there for a moment longer than usual. Something in my chest felt tight, but I ignored it. At work, I was still thinking about her words. Mike noticed it immediately. He said, "You look distracted." "What happened?" I replied, "Sarah needed money for a family emergency." Mike frowned. "And you gave it?" I nodded. "Of course." He sighed deeply. "You didn't even question it." I snapped. "Why would I question my wife?" He raised his hands. "I'm just saying, be careful." I frowned. "There's nothing to be careful about." He muttered, "That's what everyone says before it breaks." I didn't reply. Later that day, I came home early again. Sarah was in the kitchen. I walked in quietly and said, "Hey." She smiled quickly. "Hey, you're early." I nodded. "Yeah, finished faster today." She turned back to cooking. "That's good." I noticed her phone on the table lighting up. A notification popped up. I glanced at it without thinking. The name Jake appeared. I froze slightly. I asked, "Who's Jake?" She turned quickly. "What?" I pointed slightly. "That message. Who is he?" She grabbed her phone fast. "Oh, him? Just a colleague." I nodded slowly. "Colleague." She smiled too quickly. "Yeah, work stuff." I stared at her. "You got nervous for a colleague?" She frowned. I didn't. I stayed silent. She said, You're overthinking. I forced a smile. Maybe. But inside, something shifted. That night, I couldn't sleep. Sarah was beside me, breathing softly. I kept replaying her reaction. Too fast. Too defensive. I whispered, "Why did I feel that?" She turned slightly. "You're talking in your sleep." I quickly said, "Nothing, go back to sleep." She did. But I didn't. I got up later for water and heard something outside. Sarah was standing near the balcony, holding her phone. She was whispering. I stopped behind the door. I heard her laugh softly. She said, "I miss you too, don't worry." My hand tightened on the wall. I didn't move. She ended the call and came back inside. She didn't notice me watching. I quickly went back to bed. When she lay down, I closed my eyes. She said, "Are you okay?" I replied, "Yeah, just tired." She turned away. "Sleep then." I whispered, "Yeah." But sleep didn't come. Mike's words came back again. "Love can blind a man." I turned slightly and looked at Sarah's back. I told myself, "It's nothing. I'm overthinking." But my heart didn't agree anymore. The space between us felt a little wider than yesterday. Still, I held on to the idea that everything was fine. I just didn't know I was already starting to lose it. I started noticing Sarah leaving the house more often. She would say, "I have errands," and leave quickly, always dressed better than usual. One morning, I asked, "Where are you going so early?" She didn't even look back. "Just out. Don't wait for me." I stood at the door and said, "You've been going out a lot lately." She paused. "Are you keeping track of me now?" I quickly replied, "No, I just noticed." She sighed. "I'm not a child." And she left. That hit me harder than I expected. At work, Mike looked at my hand and said, "What happened there?" I flexed my fingers. "Just a small accident at the warehouse." He snapped, "Small? You're bleeding." I shrugged. "I'm fine." He grabbed my arm. "No, you're not. Go home." I pulled back. "I have deliveries tonight." Mike raised his voice. "Are you crazy? You can barely move your hand." I said, "We need the money." He stared at me. "You mean she needs the money?" I didn't answer. Lisa walked over and said, "Let me cover your shift." I shook my head. "I can manage." Lisa frowned. "You always say that." Mike pointed at me. "This isn't strength, it's stupidity." I muttered, "I'll rest later." But I didn't. That night, I went home and saw Sarah getting ready again. I asked, "Leaving again?" She nodded. "Yes." I stepped closer. "Where?" She sighed. "Why do you care so much?" I said, "Because I barely see you anymore." She grabbed her bag. "I have a life too, you know." I whispered, "We used to share it." She stopped for a second, then said, "You're being dramatic." And she left again. I stood alone in the room for a long time. Later, Mike called me. He said, "You need to stop this. You're falling apart." I replied, "I'm fine." He said, "No, you're not listening to yourself anymore." I looked at my injured hand and said, "I just need more work." He yelled, "That's not life, that's punishment." I hung up. The next day, I checked our savings account. My stomach dropped. It was almost empty. I whispered, "Where did it all go?" That night, I asked Sarah directly, "Where's the money going?" She didn't even hesitate. "Bills, rent, everything." I frowned. "It's almost gone." She snapped, "Do you think I'm stealing from you?" I quickly said, "No, I didn't mean that." She stepped closer, then stopped questioning me. I lowered my head. "I'm just stressed." She said coldly, "You're always stressed." I whispered, "I'm trying my best." She replied, "Then try harder instead of controlling me." That word hit me. Controlling? I shook my head. "I'm not controlling you." She crossed her arms. "It feels like it." I looked at her for a long moment. Then I said softly, "I'm sorry." She didn't respond. She just turned away. I stood there feeling confused, like I was losing something I couldn't explain. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling again. Sarah turned away from me. I wanted to speak, but I didn't. Something inside me kept whispering that things weren't right. But I still told myself, she's just stressed, even though I no longer fully believed it. I wasn't supposed to be there. I was just delivering a package near the cafe when I saw her. Sarah. She was sitting by the window, smiling like I hadn't seen in a long time. I froze and whispered, "That can't be her." But it was. And she wasn't alone. A man sat across from her. Jake. He leaned closer and said something that made her laugh. I stepped back behind a parked car. I told myself, just leave. Don't look. But I looked again. They were holding hands. I felt my chest tighten instantly. I whispered, no, no way. My legs wouldn't move. Jake touched her hand again, and she didn't pull away. She actually smiled wider. I pressed my hand against the wall beside me and tried to breathe. I said quietly, this is nothing. It has to be nothing. But my voice didn't sound real. I didn't go in. I didn't confront her. I just turned around and walked away. Every step felt heavier than the last. On the way home, I kept telling myself, there must be an explanation. But my mind kept replaying the same image. Her hand in his. Her smile. That comfort. I reached home and saw her already there. She looked up. You're early. I nodded. Yeah. She asked, everything okay? I sat down slowly. Were you at a cafe today? Her eyes shifted for a second. Yeah, why? I stared at her. Who were you with? She frowned. Why are you asking me like that? I leaned forward. Just answer me. She said quickly, a friend. From work. I felt my throat tighten. His name is Jake. She froze for half a second. Then she said yes. He's just a colleague. Too fast. Too smooth. I said, you were holding hands. Her expression changed instantly. What? Are you following me now? I stood up. I saw you. She raised her voice. You're imagining things. I said quietly. I saw everything. She grabbed her phone. I can't deal with this. I stepped closer. Just tell me the truth. She snapped. The truth is you're obsessed. That word hit me harder than anything. I stepped back. I said, I just wanted to understand. She turned away. There's nothing to understand. Silence filled the room. I sat down slowly, feeling like something inside me was breaking apart. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing her laugh at the cafe. Mike called me the next morning. He said, you sound dead. What happened? I didn't answer at first. Then I said, I saw her with someone. Mike went silent. You sure? I replied. I saw them holding hands. He sighed deeply. Don't react emotionally. Think. I whispered, I don't know what to think anymore. He said, you need proof before you destroy yourself. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Yeah, proof. Later, Lisa came by during my shift. She looked at my face and said, you didn't sleep. I muttered, not really. She asked softly, is it Sarah? I hesitated. Then I said, I think she's lying to me. Lisa didn't speak for a moment. Then she said, then don't confront her blindly. I looked at her. What should I do then? She replied, find the truth first. Those words stuck in my head. That night, I watched Sarah carefully when she came home. She acted normal. Too normal. I asked, where were you today? She said, out. I said, with Jake. She sighed. Yes. Work stuff. I nodded slowly. Okay. She looked at me suspiciously. That's it. I forced a small smile. Yeah. But inside, I wasn't calm anymore. Something in me had changed. I no longer felt confused. I felt awake. And that scared me more than anything else. I noticed her phone lighting up on the table while she was in the bathroom. I told myself not to look, but my hand moved on its own. I picked it up and saw it was unlocked. I whispered, just check once. My heart was already beating fast. The messages opened instantly. Jake, I miss you when will I see you again? Sarah, soon. He is working again tonight. Jake, good, use the money. He sent Sarah. I already did the hotel booking. Is confirmed. I froze. I said hotel, my fingers scrolled faster. Jake, that man. Is useful, keep it going. Sarah, he trusts me too much. Jake, perfect rent for my apartment. Is due. Sarah, I transferred it today. I dropped the phone slightly. I said, no, this can't be real. My hand started shaking. I kept reading. There were months of messages, gifts, trips, money. Transfers, my salary, my savings, everything. I whispered, I worked for this. Sarah walked out of the bathroom. What are you doing? I quickly locked the phone. I said, nothing. She stared. You look pale. I forced a smile. Just tired. She took her phone. You should rest more. I nodded, yeah. But inside I was breaking that night. I didn't confront her. I just sat in silence while she slept. I opened my own notebook and started writing everything I remembered, dates, transfers. Conversations, proof. I whispered I need. Evidence. The next day, I called Mike. I said, I saw everything. Mike asked, what do you mean? Everything. I said, she's been giving him money, my money. Mike went silent. Then he said, are you sure? I said, I read it myself. He said, then don't confront. Yet you need legal proof, bank records, messages, transfers. I nodded. Okay. Later, I met Lisa during break. She asked, you look like you didn't sleep again. I said, it's worse than I thought. She said, what happened? I showed her. Notes she read. Slowly her eyes widened. This is serious, I said. She used everything. Lisa whispered, I'm sorry. I said, don't be, I just need to understand now. She said, you're handling this too calmly. I replied, I already broke now. I'm just collecting pieces. That was the truth. I wasn't crying anymore. I wasn't asking why. I was just planning. I said, quietly, tomorrow I will go to the bank. Mike said, good, do it early. I asked, what if she notices? Mike replied, let her notice, you already know. Enough, I nodded slowly. Lisa texted me later, are you safe? I replied, I don't know anymore. She said, meet me after shift. I agreed. That evening I sat with Lisa. She said, you need to think like evidence, not emotion. I asked, how do I stop feeling? She said, you just act anyway. I laughed bitterly. That sounds like death. She said, it's survival. I went home. Sarah was already there. She said, where were you? I replied, work. She said, you look different. I said, I am tired. She said, okay, then go sleep. I said, yeah, I lay down, but my eyes stayed open. I thought about every message, every transfer, every lie. I whispered, so this is what betrayal feels like. No answer came. I turned to Sarah. She was asleep. I said softly, how long have you been lying? Still silence. I got up quietly and wrote more notes. I said, I won't break again. I will finish this carefully. Mike told me calm is power. Lisa said truth needs patience. I repeated patience. Slowly, I felt something shift inside me. No more questions, only direction. I looked at the papers and said, this is not love anymore. This is a case now. I closed a notebook and said, I will end this truth no matter what it costs. I breathed deeply for the first time. Without hope, only clarity. I knew something inside me had already died, but something new was starting to grow. I looked at my hands and said, no more blindness, no more trust. One finally understood. Everything changes now, and I will see it through to the... I didn't shout that night. I didn't break anything either. I just sat at the table and stared at my hands. Mike called me again and said, you still there? I replied, yeah. He asked, what are you going to do now? I said, not react. He paused. That's new for you. I answered, I'm done reacting. He said quietly, good. Now think. I nodded even though he couldn't see me. I am thinking. After the call, I opened a new bank account on my phone. I whispered, no one will see this. I transferred a small amount and said, step one. The next day, Lisa sat beside me during break. She said, you look different. I replied, I stopped feeling things the same way. She frowned. That doesn't sound healthy. I said, it feels necessary. She asked softly, what are you doing now? I looked at her. Planning. She leaned in. Revenge. I shook my head. Control. Lisa sighed. Just don't lose yourself in it. I said, I already lost myself once. She didn't reply. That night, Sarah came home late again. She dropped her bag and said, you didn't call. I replied, busy. She sat down. You're acting strange lately. I looked at her. Am I? She nodded. Yes. Quiet. Distant. I said calmly, maybe I'm just tired. She stared at me. We should talk. I answered, about what? She hesitated. Us. I smiled faintly. We're fine. She looked unsure. Are we? I said, go sleep. You look tired. She studied me for a moment, then stood up. Okay. When she left, I opened my laptop and started saving everything. Messages, transfers, screenshots. I whispered, every detail matters now. Mike called again. He said, any movement? I replied, slowly. He asked, you confronting her? I said no. He said, that's good. Keep distance. I nodded. I am. He added, and your emotions? I looked at the screen. I shut them off. He paused. That's dangerous. I replied, so was trusting her. Silence. Then he said, you're not the same guy anymore. I answered, I know. At work, I started tracking my spending carefully. Every bill I checked twice. Every transfer I saved. Lisa noticed and said, you're becoming obsessive. I replied, I'm becoming precise. She asked for what? I said, for when it ends. She looked worried. You're planning something big. I said quietly, I'm preparing for reality. That evening, I noticed Sarah texting more often. I didn't ask anymore. I just watched. She smiled at her phone sometimes. Not at me. I made a note of that. Later, she said, I might need more money this month. I replied, why? She said quickly, bills. I nodded. Okay. She looked surprised. That's it. I said, yes. She studied me again. You're not arguing anymore. I answered, I'm just listening. Inside, I already knew where the money was going, but I didn't say it. Not yet. After she slept, I sat alone in the dark. I opened my notes again. I said softly, he takes, she gives. I watch. It didn't feel like love anymore. It felt like a pattern. The next day, Mike met me outside work. He said, you look calm. Too calm. I replied, that's the point. He asked, what's your end goal? I paused, then said, truth. He nodded slowly. And after truth? I said, we'll see. Lisa texted me later, don't turn cold permanently. I replied, too late. That night, I reduced Sarah's access to shared funds quietly. No argument. No explanation. Just silence. She didn't notice immediately. That was the first time I realized something important. She trusted me less than I trusted her. Or maybe she just stopped caring. Either way, I felt it shifting. Sarah said, did something change with the account? I replied, just organization. She nodded. Okay. No fight. No questions. That was worse. I sat later with Mike on a call. He said, you're stepping into something dangerous. I said, I already am in it. He asked, do you still love her? I didn't answer quickly. Then I said, I don't know anymore. He said softly, that's your answer. After the call, I wrote one last line in my notes. I'm no longer reacting. I am observing everything. I closed the notebook, and for the first time, I didn't feel pain. I felt direction. Sarah came home angry that night. She threw her bag on the sofa and said, this is getting ridiculous. I looked up from my phone. What happened? She paced. He's acting crazy. I stayed calm. Ooh, she snapped, Jake. I tilted my head slightly. What did he do? She said, he's broke. Always asking me for help. I can't handle it anymore. I nodded slowly. So now it's a problem. She frowned. What do you mean? I said, nothing. Go on. She sat down hard. He keeps saying I should fix things. Like I have money falling from the sky. I replied softly, do you? She stared at me. What? I leaned back. Money doesn't fall from anywhere. She went silent for a moment. You're acting weird. I said, I'm just listening. She stood up again. I need help. We're in trouble. I asked we. She hesitated. Mimi. I nodded. Then handle it. Her eyes widened. You're not going to help me? I said calmly. I already did. She frowned. What does that mean? I replied. It means I stopped giving without understanding. She raised her voice. Since when? I looked at her. Since I started seeing clearly. She stepped closer. You're punishing me. I shook my head. No, I'm just not saving you anymore. Silence hit the room. She whispered, you've changed. I answered, I finally stopped lying to myself. That night, I got a call from Mike. He said, I heard things are heating up. I replied, they are breaking. He asked, you okay with that? I said, I'm past okay. He paused. Good. Stay steady. I nodded. I am. Next day, I went to the bank. I spoke to the officer and said, I want to report suspicious transactions. The officer asked, can you provide details? I handed over printed records. I said, these are from my shared account. He looked through them. This is serious. I replied, I know. He said, we'll investigate. I nodded. Do it quietly. He looked at me. Are you sure you want to proceed? I said, I already lost everything emotionally. I just want facts now. He wrote something down. We will contact you. I left the bank without looking back. That evening, Lisa met me outside work. She said, you're going too far. I asked, in what way? She replied, this is turning into something dangerous. I said, it already was. She shook her head. You don't look like yourself anymore. I answered, that version of me stopped existing. She looked worried. What about Sarah? I said, she's living the consequences of her choices. Lisa said softly, just don't become cruel. I replied, I'm not cruel. I'm just done being soft. That night, Sarah came back early. She looked stressed. Something is wrong with my account. I didn't react. Oh, she said quickly, some transfers are missing. I nodded. Maybe check your records. She stared at me. You're not surprised? I said, should I be? She stepped closer. Did you do something? I met her eyes. I stopped doing everything. She froze. What does that mean? I said calmly. It means you're responsible now. Her voice broke slightly. I don't understand you anymore. I replied, that makes two of us. She left the room, shaking her head. Later, I got a message from Jake's number. You ruined everything. I stared at it. I didn't reply. Mike called again. He said, bank flagged something? I answered, it's moving. He said, good. Stay out of emotional fights. I replied, I already am. Lisa texted, be careful. People like Jake don't disappear quietly. I read it and said, let him try. Days passed. Sarah became restless. She kept checking her phone, arguing with invisible pressure. One night, she said, I don't know what's happening to my life. I replied, it's catching up to it. She looked at me. Why are you so calm? I said, because I stopped running. She whispered, you're not helping me anymore. I answered, I can't help lies. She didn't respond. That silence lasted longer than any argument. And for the first time, I realized she wasn't controlling the situation anymore. Neither was I. Something else was. He said, we've initiated a formal investigation into the accounts you reported. I replied, okay. He asked, we may need your cooperation if further evidence is required. I said, you'll get it. Then he added, your wife may be contacted. I paused. That's fine. When I hung up, Mike was already on another call with me. He said, it's starting now, isn't it? I replied, yes. He asked, how do you feel? I looked at the floor. Quiet. He said softly, that's not nothing. I answered, it's everything I have left. At home, Sarah was pacing. She said the bank called me. I didn't look up. And, she snapped, they asked questions about transfers. I nodded slowly. That's their job. She stepped closer. Why would they investigate me? I replied, I don't know. She stared at me. You're lying. I met her eyes. Am I? She shouted. Something is happening behind my back. I said calmly, then find out. That shut her up for a second. She whispered, you're not even surprised. I said, I stopped being surprised a long time ago. She grabbed her phone and tried calling Jake. I watched her. She said, pick up, please pick up. No answer. She tried again. Still nothing. She looked at me. He's not answering. I said, maybe he's busy. She shouted, this isn't funny. I replied, I'm not laughing. Her hands started shaking. That was the first time I saw real fear in her face. The next day, Lisa met me outside work. She said it's all collapsing fast. I replied, that was the plan without me planning it. She frowned. You sound too calm. I said, I'm past calm. She asked, do you feel satisfied? I paused. No. She looked confused. Then what? I said, empty. She didn't respond for a moment. Then she said softly, that's the cost of it. At night, Mike called again. He said, bank confirmed irregular activity. They're escalating it. I replied, good. He asked, and Sarah? I looked toward the bedroom. Losing control. He said, and Jake? I answered, gone. He paused. You think he ran? I said, people like him don't stay when money disappears. Mike said quietly, so it's over for them. I replied, it's breaking, not over. The next morning, Sarah sat across from me. Her eyes were red. She said, I called him all night. I didn't react. She said, no response. No messages. I said, that's strange. She looked at me desperately. Something is wrong. I replied, maybe you should ask yourself what. She slammed the table. Stop talking like this. I stayed quiet. She said, you know something, don't you? I answered, I know a lot now. Her voice broke. Please just tell me. I said, I can't fix what I didn't break. That made her freeze. She whispered, you're punishing me. I said, no. I stopped protecting you from reality. She left the room, crying. For the first time, I didn't follow. Later, the bank officer called me again. He said, we've confirmed multiple unauthorized transfers. I replied, understood. He added, this will proceed legally. I said, do what you need to. When I hung up, Mike said, it's official now. I replied, yes. He asked, do you feel better? I thought for a moment, then said, I feel lighter, but not happy. He said, that's normal. Lisa texted me, I'm sorry it came to this. I replied, so am I. That night, Sarah sat alone in the living room. No phone calls, no messages, just silence. She said softly, "Everything is gone." I stood near the doorway. She didn't notice me at first. She said again, "Money and everything." I finally spoke. "Now you see it." She turned to me slowly. "Did you know this would happen?" I said, "I knew what was already happening." She whispered, "I lost everything." I replied, "So did I just earlier." That hit her. She stared at me like she didn't recognize me anymore. And maybe she didn't, because the man who would have begged, shouted, or saved her was already gone.